Hi everyone, it's Barbara and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I took some ordinary Dollar Tree Christmas trees and turned them into some beautiful high-end winter decor. Let's go ahead and get started on our very first project. Using one of Dollar Tree's Christmas trees, we're going to remove the base from the bottom and use some decorative nautical rope from Dollar Tree. I'm going to hot glue that around the base of the tree until I get to the very end, and I'll put a nice good amount of glue to hold that in place so that I can create a loop so that we'll be able to hang our swag up. So it does take a little bit of time for that hot glue to set, so you just want to hold it in place to make sure that the rope stays secure. Once I create the loop, I'm going to put some more hot glue on the other side. Again, hold that till that glue sets, and then I can twist it around the base back to where we started and glue that in piece. So that's going to be the back part of our swag where the hook at the top will sit flat or flush with your door. So we're going to flip that over and we're going to spread all of these branches out to make sure we have even amounts of branches on each side. To cover up the gaps between the branches, I'm going to use some Dollar Tree garland. I just cut a length of this off, and I'm going to wrap that around really tightly between those gaps until it fills it in, and then I can cut that off, make sure it's twisted around really tightly so it doesn't come apart, and I will continue to do that all the way down the tree until I get to the very end. Now, once I have all of that in place, I will spread my branches out and fluff them up a bit to make sure it is nice and full. And also, we're going to be giving it an artificial snow look. So I want to make sure that I'm able to get that in between all of those branches. I took that piece at the bottom and flipped it over and just attached it to another branch on the back. And I'm also going to be using this gorgeous pick from Dollar General that I found for $3. It is so beautiful. I love the greenery on it. Now, this is a Christmas pick, and since I want mine to be more of a winter decor, I will be removing those red berries and replacing them with some white berries from a pick that I found at Hobby Lobby. So I just cut a few of those stems off. Originally, I cut the red stem down and then hot glued the white berries into it, but then I realized you could just actually pull those red berry stems out, and then I hot glued some of the white berry stems right in place because it's kind of attached with some paper and intertwined there. Once I have enough white berries on there to look the way I want it to look, I'm actually going to be laying this pick on top of our Christmas tree. So our Christmas tree is more of a base and a filler, and this is going to be on the very top. And I'm going to determine where I need to cut that down. It's pretty thick, so you're going to have to use some really good wire cutters to cut that. And then I am attaching this using a zip tie. Now I'm going to make sure that I intertwine those branches and make sure everything's nice and full and even on each side. And then I'm going to add some decorative pine cone ornaments from Dollar General. You can get 12 of these for $1. And the hangers on the back are super easy to remove. You can just pull those off or cut them. And then I'm going to hot glue a few of these frosted pine cones throughout this swag. Now I am trying to be mindful of where I place them because I'm going to be placing a bow on there, and I want to make sure that I'm able to see the pine cones even though I'm going to have some tails from our bow hanging down. To give it that snow look, I'm using some Krylon Fusion all-in-one paint and primer in the color matte white, and I took this outside and I gave it a good dusting on the front, let that dry, and then I gave it a nice dusting on the back and the sides to make sure that everything was covered with that snowy look. For the bow, I'm using some burlap ribbon from Dollar General, and I have no idea how long I cut this. I just held it up so that I could make a fold-over bow. So I held it in the center, folded it over to see how long I wanted my loops to be on each side and to make sure I had enough tail to hang down for the swag so that it would be really pretty and flowing. I'm going to pinch that together and attach it using a zip tie, and then I can take my tails and make sure that I cut those so that they are the same length. Then I took the ends of the tails and rolled them up to the top of the bow, and then take the end from the inside and pull that down to create a really pretty curl. And this is going to work on wired ribbon. I did that exact same thing for the other side. Now I'm going to use some buffalo check or buffalo plaid ribbon. I get this giant spool from Amazon. I have that linked in my Amazon store, which is in my description box below if you are interested. So when I started cutting, I didn't measure them to begin with. I just knew I needed some different lengths. So I cut 4 at 14 inches, 2 at 19 inches, and 2 at 26 inches. And then the loops on the burlap bow are about 5 inches on each side. I'm going to take the 14 inches and fold that down to create a loop about halfway, maybe a little bit more, and pinch that right there where the loop meets the bow or meets the tail there. I'm going to do the exact same thing for the second one and face it to the first loop. And then I'll do the other two the same way and put those on opposite sides of each other. Then the two 19-inch strips of ribbon, I'm going to fold that down to create a loop about the similar size as the first loops, maybe just a little bit larger. I'm going to pinch that together right there where the loop meets the tail, and I'm going to put one opposite side of the other for the 19-inch. And then the 26-inch, I'll do the exact same thing, except I'm going to place this one on opposite sides of the 19-inch. So I wanted to have 4 tails for this buffalo plaid bow, but I wanted 2 of them to be longer than the other 2. So once you hold them all together where the loops are, I'm going to attach them using a zip tie. So you just want to zip tie it around where you're pinching all of those loops and get it really good and tight. And once I have that in place, I'm going to pull the tails apart because I want to make sure I do not cut the two 26 inches or the two 19 inches. I want to cut only those 4 that were the 14 inches, and I'm cutting it as close to the zip tie as possible. Then I could pull my tails forward, those different lengths, fluff those loops out, and I'm going to cut the excess zip tie off of this as well as the burlap bow. To attach the buffalo check to the burlap, I'm going to be using a chenille stem. I want to place the burlap bow behind the 2 shorter tails, but in front of the 2 longer tails. And then I can take my chenille stem and wrap that around the center of both of the bows. Twist that really tightly in the back. Make sure you have a good tight twist so they don't come apart. And then we can use that remaining chenille stem to attach it to our swag. So I'm just going to place it right below our hanger on the nautical rope and twist that really tightly in the back. And then I took the excess chenille stem and wrapped it around that zip tie so that it would not scratch my door when I hang it up. The 2 shorter tails, I dovetailed the ends of those, and I want them to rest on top of the burlap ribbon on each side. And then the longer tails, I'm going to create curls just like we did with the burlap ribbon by rolling it under until I get to the top and then pulling that end piece out. Now this is pretty forgiving ribbon, so if you don't get the curl right the first time, you can always redo it. Make sure you fluff your loops out and get them nice and full and pretty. And this project is finished, and I love how it turned out. I think this is a very beautiful winter swag, and I hope you guys like it as well. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of project number 1. Now moving on to project number 2, we are using 3 of Dollar Tree's Christmas trees. And we're also using one of their wood box, the insert. We only need the insert piece, not the outside, and 2 round wood circles from Walmart. I'm going to attach one of the trees to the wood cube with a really good amount of hot glue, let it sit in place, and then I did go back around and add a little bit more hot glue on the outside of the base of the tree. Then I added one tree to each one of those wood round circles to give it a nice good base using the hot glue. Then I'm going to pull each of these branches out, and those spaces in between these I'm going to cover with some garland ties. Now I'm not going to cut these off. I want to use the extra part of the garland tie as some extra branches. So I'm just going to wrap it around and keep the two end pieces out so it'll give it some nice fullness. I am pulling the branches down and somewhat curling the ends up to give it a nice full look, and I'm going to do that for all three trees, and you'll need about 4 garland ties per tree. So I'm going to push them all down once I get those ends somewhat curled up, and this is just the way I wanted to shape this tree, but you can shape your tree however you like. And I'm going to push them down so that when I add my snow, it's going to look like it's just heavy from the weight of the snow. In this project, we're going to use some faux snow from Dollar General, and it gives it some really beautiful coverage, but it is a very powdery feel, and sometimes it can come off pretty easily, but it gives it a really beautiful finish. I am using this wood crate DIY that I made. If you're interested in seeing how I made this using paint stir sticks and Dollar Tree wood planks, I'll have a link to that video in my description box below. I'm going to place each of these trees, and I wanted the taller one in the center right into those sections of the crate. And I'm sorry this is a little bit off camera, but I took some burlap fabric sheets and cut those in half. And I'm going to fill that in and tuck it into the crate below the trees on both sides of this crate. It's going to be a nice filler. And also I'm using some of these pine cone ornaments, and it's going to give it a good base for those pine cones to sit on. And I'm going to do that for both sides. You're going to want to make sure you intertwine your branches between all three trees to make sure they're nice and full. And I think this project turned out beautiful. I think it would be a beautiful centerpiece on your table, or just something gorgeous to add to your winter decor. If this is your first time visiting my channel and you're enjoying today's projects, I would love for you to click the subscribe button and the notification bell below this video. And visit me on all my other social media accounts. All the links are in the description box below. Our next project, my sweet friend Karen sent over an inspirational photo, and I thought that it would be cute to make a winter tree gnome. We're starting off by using one of Dollar Tree's cardboard containers. We don't need the lid, just the base, and it measures about 12 inches in diameter and about 4 inches tall. I'm going to give this a nice base coat of white chalk paint, including the bottom, and allow that paint to dry. Then I'm going to use some antique wax made by Waverly and a paintbrush and go over the base of the white paint, and then take a dry paper towel and wipe some of that excess off and bring in that lighter undertone and bring it to the top, and it's going to give it a nice wood effect. And this is how it's going to look, just depending on how many coats you want to put on there as to how dark you want it to be. I'm using 2 of Dollar Tree's Christmas trees, and I'm going to pull all the branches to one side. So for one tree, all the branches are going to be on one side. It's going to be flat on the other side. And then the other tree, I'll do the exact same thing so that I can place these two together right on the flat side and make one nice full tree. Now you will have to remove the bases from the bottom so that we can attach these together and make sure everything's nice and flat. And I'm going to attach them using zip ties. So I used a zip tie at the top, in the middle, and at the bottom to make sure it has a nice strong hold. Then I'll go in and cut all those excess zip ties off. And just like we did in the previous project, I'm going to use some Dollar Tree garland to wrap around those spaces where the zip ties are. It's going to cover those zip ties up and fill it in nicely and give us a little bit of extra branches for a nice full tree. Then I can reattach one of the bases to the bottom with some hot glue. You're not going to have enough room to attach both, so I just placed one on there. To create the faux snow on this project, since we've already used spray paint and we've already used faux snow, I'm going to use a dry brush technique with some chalk paint. All you do is take a clean paintbrush, dip it into your paint, wipe the excess on a paper towel off of the end of the paintbrush, and then go over each of the limbs until you get the desired effect or amount of paint that you want on there to create this beautiful faux snow. Now we can attach this back into our cardboard container that looks like a tree trunk, and I'm going to put a really good amount of hot glue on the base of the tree and set that down flush into our container and let that glue set up. I'm using some picks from Dollar Tree and maybe one or two from Walmart. I just wanted the frosted greenery to add to our tree to give it a little bit more dimension. And I only wanted the frosted greenery. Some of them have the white berries on there, so I do pull those off. But you can use whatever you like, whatever colors you like, or whatever extra picks you like to use. I just wanted mine to be a little bit more full at the bottom and to be more visually appealing than just the Christmas tree itself. Once I have a couple of those added in, I am also going to take some extra fabric that I had. This is a gray fabric that I picked up at Walmart. This piece measures about 26 inches by 22 inches. And I'm going to fold that in half. And then because I'm right-handed, I'm going to pull the piece that I folded over so that I can cut from the bottom right up to the top left. So I'm just going to cut almost like a triangle. So I measured out about 10 inches from my seam on the left, and I'm just going to cut from the bottom right up to the top left into a triangle form. Now I have the open part facing me, and I'm going to use some hot glue to attach these together. So I'm just going to run a nice consistent amount of glue along the edging of the fabric, and then I can fold the other side over, and then I'm going to use my little spatula tool to make sure all the glue is set and nice and firm and everything's attached. Once your glue is set, then you can take your fabric and turn it inside out. So because mine is the same on either side, it didn't matter, but if you have a pattern, you're going to want to do it inside out so that when you flip it over, your pattern's on the outside. Then I'm just going to cut a straight line across the bottom so everything's nice and even. So this is going to become our stocking for our gnome, and it measures about 17 3/4 of an inch long and about 8 3/4 of an inch at the bottom. I'm using one of these Easter Bunny clip. It's like an Easter Bunny tail clip that I found at Dollar Tree back in the spring. And I'm going to remove the clip, and then I decided to go ahead and remove the felt that's on there too, because I felt like you would be able to see that once I attach it to the top of our stocking cap. So once I removed all that, it just has a nice little hole there, and this is where we can stick our fabric in there for the stocking cap. So I'm going to take my little spatula tool, the end of it, and put that down into the stocking cap so I don't burn myself, but this will be able to stick our fabric down in there and get a nice good seal, and then you can just pull your little spatula piece back out and make sure that the little ball at the end stays nice and tight right there on your stocking cap. And we'll let that set up, and then for the outside portion for the bottom of the stocking cap, I am using one of these white mufflers from Dollar Tree. Now, if you can't find these, you could also use those microfiber cloths from Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to cut a strip down. I didn't even measure it, so I'm not sure exactly how wide it is. But I'm going to take a piece of wax paper and place this into the center of the bottom of the cap, so when I glue this muffler piece on there, it does not glue my stocking cap together. So I'm just going to add some glue to the outside edges and the end of that white furry piece, and then take the spatula tool and tap it down and make sure that glue spreads out pretty good, and then I can flip it over and do the exact same thing. And once that section's done, I can remove my wax paper and move it to the other side. So again, I can make sure that I do not glue the end of the cap together. So when I removed it, I just folded it over to the other side to make sure I didn't get any glue on the inside of the cap or the stocking cap. And then we can finish this side up and it will meet right back where we started at the back seam of the stocking cap. And then once all that's glued in place, if you have any extra like I do, it's not exactly even on the end, I just took my scissors and trimmed that up so it's nice and neat. I'm going to take some polyfill and insert this into the cap. Now, you could put a really good amount of polyfill in there if you want it to be nice and tall and stand up straight on your gnome, but I wanted my stocking cap to kind of fold over. So I'm making sure that I don't put any of the polyfill right there in the center so that it'll be able to fold over nice and easy once I put this on the tree. And you can fill it up as much as you want or as little as you want, depending on how full you want your stocking cap to be. I'm going to attach this on top of the tree, and it sits really nicely. You don't even have to glue it. I made sure that the front is pulled up slightly higher than the back, so the back is tucked down a little bit more. And then I'm going to use another one of those Easter bunny tails. Now I will keep the clip on this and actually clip that on a branch on the tree. Then you can pull your stocking cap over and kind of tuck the nose in under that and fiddle with the top to make sure all your polyfill is kind of full all the way around your cap. And then this is how I'm going to fold mine over, but if you had yours nice and full, you could have it nice and straight up. Then I'll add a couple more pieces of frosted greenery. I waited to add more greenery so I would know where the nose and the stocking cap was going to hang over. And I used those to fill it in and make it nice and full. And I'm also going to use some of Dollar General's decorative pine cone ornaments and remove the hangers and glue those onto a few of the branches. It's going to give it a really beautiful pop of brown. Once I have those in place, this gnome could be finished if you want to leave it just the way it is. It's really beautiful, but I decided to go ahead and make some arms for it. So I'm using some of that same gray fabric from Walmart, and I cut that down. It's about 12 inches by 5 inches. I folded it over, and then I'm going to cut that in half. On the one square, I'm going to run the bead of glue along the side and fold it over to create our seam and do the exact same thing on the other piece. After the glue sets, I can turn these inside out so it'll look like a nice sewn seam from the outside. And I'll do the exact same thing for the other arm. And then I'm going to take some of that same muffler material and cut out 2 squares. So they ended up measuring about 3 inches by 3-inch squares, and you'll need 2 of those. And you'll flip it over to the back side where the furry part's now on your table, and I'm going to run glue all the way around those edging, and then I'm just going to fold the corners in and glue them on top of the base there, and it almost is like the shape of a bell. And I'll do the exact same thing for the other square. And these are going to become the mittens for the arms. And they're just going to tuck right there into the end of the fabric we just glued together. So I'm going to put some glue on the inside edging of that and just be really careful not to burn yourself with that glue. And then tuck the mitten in there and make sure your glue is sealed all the way around. Do the exact same thing for the other arm. And then I could take some polyfill and fill those in. So I don't want it to be super full. I want it to have a little bit more of flexibility. So I kind of took the polyfill and rolled it out. And then I'm going to tuck that inside of the fabric. But I'll leave some spacing at the end. So I'll be able to use that end piece to attach it to our gnome tree. And once I get that as full as I want it, I'll do the exact same thing for the other arm. Now once I have both of the arms completed, I'm going to twist the end of the open end and kind of hold it up to my gnome tree to see exactly where I want to place the arm. And once I know the exact placement, like how long I want the arm to hang down, then I can glue that end shut. And I just put glue on the inside and kind of folded it over and twisted it. And then I'll take that piece and put a really good amount of hot glue on there where the seam is. So the seam's going to be on the underside of the tree so you won't see it. And I'll tuck that in under one of those branches and hold it in place and do the exact same thing for the other side to add the other arm. And once you get that one in place, this gnome tree is finished, and I think it turned out absolutely beautiful. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you have a favorite, please let me know in the comments section down below. I always love to know which one is your favorite. Thank you so very much for taking time out of your day and watching my video. I truly do appreciate each and every one of you. Please take care, and I will see you guys next time.